Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Climate Game Devlog number 2. I have relatively little time at this point. I got the rest of today and it's 5 p.m. and then tomorrow to work on this, and I've not done any work all week. I just kept pushing it off. There was other stuff that I wanted to get done. So, this week is looking at strategies from Drawdown and Exponential Roadmap. Probably taking some notes on that. I was going to have a deliverable. Originally, whenever I planned out the class, I was like, I'll make a whole document explaining a bunch of different strategies from different places, not thinking that, somebody had already done that. And that's exactly what Drawdown has. It's like, here's the comprehensive guide to all the strategies that we should be using to get our emissions down. Once I've done that, I have a time box of 4.5 hours. So hopefully I'll do most of that tonight so that I can kind of enjoy the more fun stuff tomorrow, which is playing some other games that deal with climate change and seeing kind of what those are about. A lot of them, I remember seeing some stuff on the NASA website, and they mostly look like flash games or educational type games for kids, which are great, but I definitely want to make something that's gamey and fun and engaging, but also gets people to do something important. And then once I've done that, I think I have enough background to at least put together a pitch for what kind of game this is going to be. You can kind of see here. Maybe it might be too small because I keep forgetting it's a big screen. Engagement types, so is this going to appeal to action game players, or is it going to be more about exploration or simulation or something like that? The premise of the game, what's going on, technical details, which I already have most of the stuff figured out. I know it's going to be an Unreal. I know it's going to be mouse and keyboard. But then there's some other things, is it going to be maybe local multiplayer? That could be really cool. I was thinking about having a companion site, maybe even if my instructor and I were talking about other sort of hooks into it. And if there's stuff that if there's a reason that I would want to take the player out of the game, I could maybe host it there, because networking for a DigiPen game is not really... You can do it, it's just you can't really I can't run a server, at least. I don't even know if the DigiPen Game Gallery would let me run a server and allow people to connect to it for leaderboards or something like that. But can get some other online connectivity sort of stuff, maybe with social media hooks, so you finish a level or whatever, and you get a certain score or something, and it's you can share this to Facebook or Twitter or whatever. I don't know exactly how those things work, but it could be a cool thing to include. Then I need to obviously include what sort of climate solution is going to be included in this game idea and what the target behavior for the player is afterwards. So I want people to play the game and actually go do something differently with their lives that will help us reach those 2030 and 2050 emissions limits, which are 50% emissions and then 0% emissions by 2050. So I'm gonna get started reading. I'll probably start with Drawdown and taking notes on the solutions that kind of most interest me, that I see, oh, that's really cool. The ones that are kind of the most expected to be the most effective, projected to be the most effective. And also, if I see anything that really sticks out to me, this would make a lot of sense in a game, or to have the game pushing this solution somehow, then those are things that I'm going to look at. So I'm going to start there, and I'll be taking notes. But again, this is primarily kind of a research thing, and it'll get more into gamey stuff once I get this. Once I start on this pitch. I'm going to end up going in just a minute here, but I started getting some of the main solutions, notes for the main solutions down. And I would recommend, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, look at this website, Project Drawdown. It's amazing. And it's really easy. Sometimes it's hard for me to start focusing on something. But if this is something that you want to look into and research, if you click on, they have a whole table of all these solutions. I mean, there's a book that explains these things in greater depth. But sorry, my family's yelling in the background. But this website has plenty of information for pretty much anybody that would be looking at it, I think. And whenever you look at a given solution, I just like the design of the website. Like, I'm just gonna sing your praise because I think it's great that these related solutions, you scroll down and you're like, oh, like improved rice production. What does that mean? And it's really easy to just like click through and just learn about all these different things in a really sort of organic, like your interest kind of way. Like, oh, I've heard of bioplastic before. Like my school uses that kind of stuff. And you just kind of go off that way. And yeah, it's a really fun way to learn about this stuff. So we'll come back later and get some more notes down. We're back, and I guess every household in the nearby is like blowing their leaves simultaneously, which is great. Took notes on more of the solutions last night, and I also looked at exponential roadmap a little bit more, but I think it's kind of out. It's really for businesses, and it's kind of like outside the purview of what I am interested in and what I'm looking at. So from these solutions, there wasn't a whole lot that seemed like the average person can like partake in. I mean, in terms of reducing food waste, like here in the United States, that's mostly due to businesses buying and not being able to sell all their food and things like that. Health and education, like all of these are things where the government could step in and implement new policies and changes that would help, especially like with reducing food waste. So limiting how much food can be wasted so that businesses aren't buying too much of it. With health and education, obviously supplying women with contraception so they can choose when they want to get pregnant is huge. Like this, having a high population is just going to put more strain on our natural resources. So it's really would be extremely valuable for more women to have better access to healthcare. Plant-rich diets is pretty much the one thing that I feel like is something that the individual can really sort of contribute to on a daily basis. And thankfully, it seems like even within the last couple of years, like I see advertisements all the time now for like alternative meats and there's like alternative eggs now that I actually am really interested in and I want to try because I like eating eggs a lot. Yeah, like those things seem good, but I also am wary about making a game that just encourages people to like stop eating meat. If that's like the main focus of it, I think that's gonna be kind of rough. What I feel like I'm getting at is that I definitely want players to be able to do something when they come away from the game and have a clear idea of what is beneficial for them to do. So I can pull a little bit from the drawdown solutions, and I think it's really important that I understood these and knew what the kind of like main solutions are. But I also want to look more at I just want to Google like what can individuals do to help reverse climate change. And then me as well, like I want to switch into a career where this is my primary focus. And I mean, this is a really simple, like obvious thing, but the people working on wind turbines is going to be like one of the most sought after jobs in the next few years. Sounds cool to me, but I would love to be able to. I think exploring that would also give me some good context for like what the average person can do, even if they're not like me looking to, build their entire career around this one purpose. If they can just change something in their everyday life, what could they do? So I'm gonna look into those two questions a little bit more, and that will probably kind of wrap up my research, and I'll start working more on the game pitch. This is pretty interesting. So this is Citizens Climate Lobby. They're basically lobbying in the United States government for something similar to, it sounds like the cap and trade tax, but it's essentially a carbon tax in line with the Paris Agreement. Yeah, the benefit of that, of the carbon tax over the regulations, is that it's more likely to gain bipartisan support, and it's also better for our economy, innovation, and it also mentioned the poor, as the tax revenue generated by those carbon emissions. So if you're a business and you are emitting greenhouse gases, then you have to pay a tax for how, I guess that scales with how much you emit. And that actually gets paid back directly to citizens, not the US government, which is really cool. So it actually supports people who are have lower income. I looked at some other careers just for my own interests, stuff that interests me, and a lot of them are in science and politics, being something like a lawyer. One of those cool things was being a renewable energy technician, which is, like I said, that's a rapidly growing industry, and it's probably going to grow really, really fast in the next few years if we actually go for our 2030 and 2050 targets. If the United States commits to that job will be in high demand, and that's cool because that doesn't even necessarily require a degree. From what I read, you could do that from a training program from a local college, a community college, or the page I was looking at said potentially even learning on the job, which is really exciting. And it sounds like something that a lot of people, I think especially after COVID, after the quarantine is ending, that a lot of people will need jobs, and all of the potential amount of jobs that could be created by building more clean energy and renewable energy could be massive. So hopefully that ends up providing a lot of Americans with good jobs. As far as what regular quote unquote people can do, it's switching to plant-based diets is a huge one. Use cleaner transportation, contact your local representatives and ask them to support good climate legislation. I had in this something that I figured would be powerful is only supporting businesses that are working towards net zero, right? Like that, we live in a capitalist society, and you are the person with the dollar, and if you say, I'm not going to buy your product because you're polluting a whole lot, I'm going to, give it to this other company that's actually doing something good for the environment or whatever, or at least not actively destroying the environment, then it forces companies to innovate, to offer better products at a lower price point and, more higher sustainability. Yeah, I think I'm going to get started on fleshing out a document that just has all my ideas about different things that could take place in the game. It interests me. Something that I kind of want to play with is, I think a lot of people have this mindset, this sort of like doom, pessimist mindset of like, well, we're all just gonna die, so like, what does it really matter or whatever. So I kind of want to address that in the game, like I especially because I think it's going to be played by a lot of people who feel like they're not in control of the situation and feel like there's nothing that they can do, and maybe that starts to overtake them, and they're like, if there's not anything we can do, whatever. And I kind of think it would be powerful to put the player in the position of a character who's kind of trying to fight against that, right? Like, I'm imagining some sort of dialogue system or whatever where you talk to other characters about like, no, this really matters. It could matter to you very soon. And even if it's not tomorrow or whatever, it probably will start significantly affecting your daily life in the next 20, 30 years. And even if you like survive, even if you're okay because you have enough wealth, the poorest people in the world are going to be the ones most affected by this. And I think to sort of project that, like, well, we should just throw our hands up and not do anything because the world's doomed anyway, is a very sort of privileged thing to do. And I think we lose track of the fact that, like, other humans live on and share this planet with us, and they matter, and we should do everything that we can to ensure that they have safe and healthy lives. So I kind of want to explore that and kind of get the player to sort of push against that in the game and use the game mechanics to fight that in some way. Another thing was focusing on building community. That's sort of like using platforms that people are already familiar with. And I think, Discord and Twitch are a little bit niche. They're they're intended primarily for people who are into like online gaming, but it's a huge segment of people. And so, I think if you could kind of use those platforms to like get people really excited about this, it might work really well. Another one of these pages mentioned one of the best things that you can do as an individual is talk with people, because people are more likely to trust you as a friend or a family member or whatever over a scientist on something that's like scientific, right? But they're more likely to listen to you and to trust you, and that sort of emotional connection matters a lot. I think one of the other things that I had on this was that like talking with family and friends. And I think especially in the United States, with the amount of political change that a lot of these solutions are going to require, how many years is it before we get different people in office or whatever? And it's depending on where you fall on the political spectrum, like probably numbers wise, it's good for the environment that Congress is now Democrat majority, and that we have a Democratic president, and especially older folks, but even people like my parents who are in their like 40s and 50s, right? Like getting those people to like not just say, climate change is bad and we have to do something about it, but like, okay, when you vote, I need you to like look at these people intensely and go see if they have a climate policy, if they have a plan for anything like that. Kind of one of the primary ways for people to do something about climate is to change their habits of consumption, especially with meat, but also to be more involved in politics and to support people that are actually going to put legislation through that's going to permanently change the way that businesses have to operate in the United States, so that they can't continue to pollute, and that they have to start producing more clean energy, especially. So lots of ideas there. I'm gonna just start writing down more stuff. So as I was writing, I came up with a list of sort of intended actions, having a basic understanding of the things that I've been researching: climate change, causes, effects, solutions. I think that just knowing what information exists out there, right? I think a lot of people have been misled and told that like, well, we're not really sure and we're not 100% certain. It's like, actually, no, we do. And despite it being a complicated issue, like I didn't know that Drawdown had, pretty much every big possible solution to climate change. Everything that we're going to have to do sort of in aggregate, I guess, like in culmination, but that exists. And I think that time summary of that book, The Future We Choose, like I really want to actually read that when I have time. But I think that for me at least was the thing that like really struck me on an emotional level of like, this is what this actually means for humanity. And so people being aware that those sources exist and being interested in going and reading through them and doing more research, I think would be valuable. Switching to a plant-rich diet seems like kind of one of the big ones the individuals can take part in. And then this initiating conversations with friends and family. So coming in with knowledge, being knowledgeable, using that to your advantage, and using personal connection to get them interested in the topic, the issue, and talking about the importance, especially in the United States, of voting for representatives who will fight for the right legislation. And and this engagement is based off of Quantic Foundry's gamer motivation profile, which is great. If you haven't checked that out, it's a super useful design tool. This is just kind of stack ranking like what I think is going to appeal to people about the game, or what things I expect to kind of use to appeal to people. So creativity, the player is going to be learning a lot of information. That's part of creativity. Social, so there's going to be a community aspect, even if it's simulated in the game of like talking to other characters and stuff. It kind of emulates what I want the player to go out and do in real life. So it kind of falls into that. And then platforming, exploring, adventuring, that kind of stuff. As I was looking at my tech, I started thinking about, I've been envisioning this as a single player platforming game. But I was like, wow, I think this would, like, if it were multiplayer, I think in an ideal world, this game kind of has to be multiplayer, like local multiplayer, like you and a family member or friend like sitting on the couch experiencing this together, because I think that's sort of like almost peer pressure, right? Of like being there together and like seeing the facts there with each other, and it's like mentally I think like harder to deny that, like, and it builds accountability. It's like somebody else is here with me, that like at some point down the road we'll talk about this game again, and we'll probably talk about like, did we actually go do the things that we should have done based on what we know now. So I think that would be like the sort of accountability portion of it is really important. But that being said, I just don't think it's in the cards for me to have the time to actually build a local multiplayer game that really manages to achieve all of these things. I think something would have to be missing. Yeah, I think it would just be too big of a gamble. But then again, I guess that's kind of sometimes the point of DigiPen is to gamble and stuff and try. I don't know. So right now I'm really torn over whether I want the game to have local multiplayer or not. I'm gonna think about it more and probably start actually, because I pretty much have an idea, I think, of what the game is going to be like. Just the ending is sort of the thing that's kind of got me questioning stuff, but I think it'll probably be something like some sort of talking to people and trying to convince them that this is an important issue and that they should like vote for somebody or whatever. I kind of like feel weird about like representing two different like political candidates or something in the game, and then literally part of the game is like trying to convince people to like vote for one or the other. But I think that could be done in a way that makes sense, and you know, you just note that it's like it's one solution, it's like part of the problem, and it's not everything. So, but maybe the player like gets kind of a cumulative points or something out of doing all of these, actually, now that I think about it. So if they manage to, the more stuff that they learn, like that improves their score. Convincing people that like voting for this person is powerful or whatever, like that gets some points. Maybe it's something like that, where you kind of at the end of the game it sort of gives you a cumulative of like see how like doing all of these different parts together is the thing that has the highest impact, and then that kind of reflects like on a global scale, that's kind of the same thing. We have to do all of these different strategies in order to meet our targets. It's not just, you know, wind power or solar power or everybody going vegan. It's all sorts of stuff in combination. Yeah. So I'm going to write more of the game pitch and I guess try to work out in my head whether it's going to be local multiplayer or not. More things that I considered with the whole local multiplayer thing is one, for an already kind of niche sort of game that's, it, even if it serves as a fun like platformer that, it has a wide appeal, I think, that kind of base, if it, is very clear from the outset that like, hey, this is a game about climate change and discussing those solutions and learning stuff, I think that kind of narrows the number of people that are going to be interested in playing it. even if I made some really strong multiplayer components to like really make the payoff of playing with somebody else and having them in the room like really good, I think it would be difficult for players to like actually encourage other people to sit down and play the game with them. That might be difficult. The other big issue is that I need to do playtesting remotely. Primarily, I can play with my family a little bit. I can have them do some testing for me, but I need to mostly play remotely. Back in the day at DigiPen, it wasn't too bad because you could just set up a TV and people tend to walk around with their friends or groups or stuff, whatever. Anyway, you'd be like, hey, can I get 2 of you to play this game with me? And that wasn't too bad. It is a problem that can be overcome, but it's huge. And for a game that I really want to focus on, like doing a lot of testing and making sure that I'm actually being rigorous about ensuring that the game is having these intended act, like people are actually going and doing these things afterwards, like measuring that. I think it just, the more that I think about all the risks, I think it is probably too much to do local multiplayer. So probably looking at a single player game. Yeah, but I think most of the content and the ideas and stuff that I want to have in, also I just have this ad paused. I don't know what Code Academy is. I don't care. I'm not trying to promote it or anything. So I'm going to write down my document, my pitch document. Yeah. Okay, realized I forgot to show this. It's my game pitch. It's done. Yeah, this will be a third-person platformer. You talk to people, learn stuff about climate change, and you do stuff for climate change. Next week we'll be making a prototype, which I'm 99% sure is going to be, I'm going to actually make a board game. So I'll do a video showing that, making a tabletop game for it. But yeah, that's pretty much the end of my research and like conceptualizing for the game pitch. Obviously the prototype will have some of its own planning and turning that into a product roadmap for the video game as well, like obviously the final product. But doing a board game for sort of a prototype is valuable, and just that it's really cheap and you can figure out kind of how your ideas are going to work out easily based on that and kind of scope things out too. So see you then. Thanks.